Good afternoon. My name is Khemlani, and this is my presentation on defamation. Defamation, the act of damaging the good reputation of someone by slander or libel. Slander is verbal and libel is written. I will be talking about two major cases that help form the way defamation is looked at in the law. The first case will be Sullivan versus New York, and the second one will be Gertz versus Welch. Part 1. Sullivan versus New York. Who are the parties to the case, and what facts led to their dispute? The plaintiff in the case was L.B. Sullivan, who was one of the 3 commissioners of Montgomery Police, and the defendants were the New York Times, which was the newspaper publisher of the article heeding their voices. Why did Sullivan feel his reputation was damaged by the New York Times publication? Mr. Sullivan is one of the 3 elect commissioners of the city of Montgomery, Alabama. He testified that he was Commissioner of the Public Affairs, and the duties are supervision of the Police Department, Fire Department, the Department of Cemetery, and the Department of Scales. He felt that his reputation was damaged because the positions that he held helped the community, and by being surrounded by these allegations, it made him look like he was an enemy of the civil rights community. But what the Supreme Court says, that the article in the New York Times enhanced his image instead of hurting it or damaging his reputation. What are the elements of defamation? Libel. The plaintiff would have to show that the defendant has been harmed emotionally or physically. Sullivan felt like he was being seen as an enemy of the public because of these allegations, even though he was in charge of things that made the community safe. Since Sullivan was a public official, what did the plaintiff have to prove in this case? They would have to prove that there was an intent to harm his reputation with malice, and there was actual harm that happened to Sullivan because of what was printed. What was the U.S. Supreme Court's decision, and why did it make that decision? The U.S. Supreme Court ruled in favor of the New York Times because they felt there was no actual malice and they are protected by freedom of speech. The court found that Sullivan did not experience any actual harm from what was printed in the newspaper. Part 2. Gertz versus Welch. Who are the parties to the case? Was the petitioner a private or public figure? Petitioner, Elmer Gertz, attorney representing the Nelson family in civil litigation against police officer Nucero. Respondent, Welch, a magazine publisher who warranted his reader that the police being developed that supported communism. Elmer Gertz was a private figure, but Nucero was a public figure since he was a police officer. What were the alleged defamatory statements about Gertz in the American Opinion article? He was called a communist fronter, a Leninist, and an architect of a frame-up. What was done to confirm the accuracy of these allegations against Gertz? The allegations were proven wrong. When looking into his history, he never got arrested, nor was he a part of any communist group or had anything to do with the attack on police. How do you think these allegations affected Gertz's reputation? These allegations affected Gertz in very bad ways. Because as a lawyer, you have to have a good reputation for people to hire you. These allegations ruined that. These allegations also ruined his personal life, because if you were in his life, you would be branded the same way. What would you have done differently than Welch to avoid the lawsuit? Personally, I would have double-checked the information before I did anything. These type of claims are very serious and can do major damage to someone's family and someone's life. What is your state's defamation law? Research your state using the link State Defamation Law. The defamation law in Florida is a false statement of fact communicated to a third party which is meant to hurt the plaintiff's reputation or economic well-being. Florida is one of the few jurisdictions where criminal defamation statutes still exist. The defamation statute of limitations in Florida is 2 years after the situation took place. How can you relate to what you've learned from Sullivan and Gertz's case in the future to your future work in the communications industry? I've learned that you have to double or triple check all the information that is given to you before you publish or report something. Also, that people's lives and jobs and reputations is at risk if you lie about what happened. Making sure that having the correct information is key to maintaining a job in the communications industry without going through a whirlwind of lawsuits and cases that you have to fight. Overall, I would like to thank you for watching my presentation, and here are my references.